Dear friends from Cherlyabinsk, I would like to start my presentation apologizing. I will first apologize for not being there with you. Not only me, but other experts from Argentina, wanted to be in Cherlyabinsk with you since the beginning of the year, really. We were planning to go, but the situation has become crazy and it's impossible to travel, basically. Therefore, for that reason, I am not there. And that is a pity professionally for me, because I could learn a lot, as it will always happen when I am in Cherlyabinsk. But also, I apologize because I have not the opportunity to see many friends there, starting by Alexeyev. And I don't know if Professor Ilin will be there. It will be very nice to see academician Ilin after some years. I am seeing Sergei usually because we are together in this Fukushima project, but I miss my contact with my Russian colleagues, but I apologize therefore that I cannot be there. Well, I will try to share my screen. This is normally the more difficult thing to do. Let me see. I will open my presentation. I hope that you are seeing it. And well, I am going to talk with you on the epistemological constraints that we have in the attribution of radiation health effect. And you will see that this is causing a lot of problems to all of us, and it's convenient that we talk about this. Epistemology, as you know, is a science that we are not very much used to. It's a philosophical and methodological discipline that studies knowledge, structure, functioning, development of knowledge. Knowledge, and in particular, the limitation of knowledge. And we, radiation scientists, have sometimes ignored epistemology in what is related to the unavoidable limitations of our knowledge. And this has consequence for attributing health effect to radiation exposure situations. The purpose of my presentation, therefore, is to review the epistemological limitations of the science that study the health consequence involved with exposure to low doses of radiation and their implication for attributing such health effect to radiation exposures. The content of my presentation, we will first talk about the science dealing with radiation health effects, radiation pathology, radiation epidemiology, radiation biology, and radiation protection. And then we will see some of the epidemiological constraints. The LNT conundrum is one of the problems that we have, we know. Let's see a little about dose response. Also about dose rate and dose rate change influence. And legal implication, that is one of the problems that we have for the future, and one epilogue. Let's start with the science that will radiation health effect. Well, the first, perhaps more important, is radiation pathology. And there are not epistemological constraints for radiation pathology. Only the competence of radiopathologists for establishing the method and validity of their diagnosis and attestations of deterministic effect. For there is not there any limitation in the science of radiation pathology except the quality of the pathologist. This is a good news, and for that reason, we do not have problems in high level of those. In radiation epidemiology, just the opposite. We can estimate and attest the incidence of stochastic radiation effects in cohort of individuals exposed to radiation. However, as you will see, because the background level of stochastic effect is relatively high, epidemiological estimates of the stochastic effect of radiation have statistical and intrinsic limitations, and epidemiology cannot demonstrate the existence of such effect at low-dose exposure situation. We know how an epidemiology works. He has a control cohort, number of people, number of cancers in these people, and the probability of natural cancer. And then we have an exposed cohort, to which we add the probability of cancers due to radiation. And the number is now the total cancers. Well, it's difficult to see this because these are the total cancers. These are the cancers due to natural. And the difference is very small and changing, for it's not so easy to see. What we want to see is the difference between the malignancies due to radiation and the natural malignancies. This is the difference that is so difficult to see. And if we want to see it with certain efficiency, let's say of 95%, we need that the standard deviation, which is that, be higher, that the difference be higher than 2 standard deviations. Otherwise, we will not see anything. And if we operate this algebraically, we will arrive to this equation, that is the equation that said the number of people that we need to see something in relation to the dose. As you see, it's an equation that is inversely proportional to the square of the dose. Therefore, when the dose became very, very, very small, the number became extremely, extremely high. If we plot this equation in a log-log paper, dose and people, this is the plotting, and this distinguishes 2 very clear areas. An area where we can detect, an area where there is an epistemological constraint to detect. And for 1 millisievert, let's say, we will need 10 to 9 people. Therefore, absolutely impossible. There is not a epidemiological study that can detect something about the 10 to 9 people, the full population of the world. These are the epistemological limits of epidemiology. And then we have radiation biology, who has also some inherent epidemiological constraints for attributing health effect. Radiobiology, as you know, can provide scientific insight in the mechanism of inductions, but it cannot reliably attest the occurrence of health effect in either exposed individuals or in cohort of individuals. And the reason is that the process for that radiobiological use, from the change in the DNA, going then to the expressions, the biological expressions of these changes, to the mutations, and then to the fixing of these mutations, and then to the propagation through the body, to the end in the metastasis. Well, this process, all this process that radiobiologists study, this process occur over a long period of time, starting for a few seconds to years. In few seconds, we have the exposures. And after 2 years, we have the epidemiological evidence. We know the physicochemic of this exposure rather well, very well, I will say. We know the epidemiology very well, or reasonably well with the limitation that I mentioned. We know the biological fixes rather more or less, but all this period of physiological involvement, we know very little. These are the limitations that we have in radiobiology. And we want to radiation protection. What we do in radiation protection? we assess radiation exposure situations and the conjectures and infers radiation risk on the basis of information provided by the science of radiation pathology, radiation epidemiology, and radiation biology. Therefore, in radiation protection, we inherit all these epistemological constraints coming from the science that support our profession. Let's go to this epistemological constraint with a little more detail. And let's start with which I call the L&T conundrum. No? For stochastic effects, as we know, we have characterized the dose response with the acronym L&T. I don't like acronyms because do not convey properly information. It's intended to mean linear dose-response relationship with no threshold of dose, but there is ambiguity in his precise meaning. It is a premise, it is an hypothesis, it is a model. What it is L&T? And it is many things. For epidemiologists, L&T is an hypothesis, a conjecture, that suggests that the increase in background cancer incidence per unit dose measured at relatively high doses is the same as low doses. The epidemiologists don't know what happened at low doses. He knows what happened at high doses. And he makes an hypothesis. And this hypothesis is the L&T. For radiobiologists, is L&T perceived being progressively observable? Suggests that at low dose there is a proportional increase in the likelihood of cellular effect and assume that this cellular effect can lead to cancer. And for radiation protection, what is L&T for us? It's a model, just a model, a simplified description of reality. We know that reality is not that, but it's practical for managing radiation, operational radiation protection, particularly workers, because if not, we should give a different delta to a given delta dose to give a different delta protection. And this will create many, many problems, particularly with the labor unions, because automatically we will need to give more protection to older people, and therefore the employers will discriminate between young and older people. And that is unacceptable. This dose response has been studied very much, but UNSCARE, as you know very well, many of you are involved in the work of UNSCARE, and this has been synthesized by the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, in a very simplistic way, I will say, but at least it's a synthesis. This is the synthesis of UNEP. You can see in this area the deterministic effects. You can see in these areas where epidemiology look for stochastic effects, and we will see in this area where what we have is a biological conjecture. We plot probability versus doses, high to low, and the probabilities really I have to underline are of two types. In the high doses, we have frequentistic probability which are sustained with frequencies. In the low doses are subjective probabilities, is what we believe that happened. This relationship have to be seen in conjunction to the UNSCARE 2012 report. I recommend you very much to see this report, and particularly the paragraph 25 of the report where the issue of attributability is described. This relationship, together with this report, you will see they clearly distinguish three completely different areas. The areas where the effects are clinically observable in individuals. The area where the effects are statistically observable in populations. And the area where the effects are biologically plausible, but not necessarily proved. We have here the area where it can be detected in individuals, diagnosed in individuals, are the deterministic effects. the area of a stochastic effect, which can be assessed in cohort of populations above a given dose, for the reason that we explained before, and then the area where the effects are biologically plausible, but no more. And we can therefore distinguish here facts from conjectures, which are two different things. And I use the word conjectures not in a derogative way. I mean, we in physics, many times we do conjectures. But a conjecture is not a fact, are two different things. In this area, we have facts, either pathological fact for the deterministic effect or epidemiological fact for a stochastic effect. But in this area, what we have are conjectures, things that we believe, but we cannot prove. Ansker has separated, therefore, these two areas in what Ansker calls attribution. You can attribute the effect to a situation, and inference. What you can do is an inference of risk, but you cannot make any attribution. But there is a more important epistemological constraint, is the influence of dose rate and dose rate change. I would like that you remember from where our data are coming. Our data are coming mainly from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? There was a very slow dose that boom, the bomb came and the dose was immediately high. What was the dose rate? And the dose rate was very big in a moment and then go down. And the change of dose rate changed dramatically as well. Now let's see a normal situation, the situation we see in everything life. The dose is normally growing slowly with time. The dose rate normally is more or less constant, vary a little, in some professions, but usually the dose rate is constant. And the change of the dose rate is zero in many situations. In the only place where I see a change in the dose rate are in the pilots of planes. When the plane is going up, there is a change in the dose rate, but also it's a change during 15 minutes. It's not like in Hiroshima. For we have compared this situation, is correct? I'm not so sure. The risk that we are using coming from Fukushima and Nagasaki, from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, pardon, 5% per sievert, is the same. We have calculated this risk for a very high dose change, dose rate, and very high dose rate change. Now, when these are low, the risk is the same. Nobody knows this. We, with a group of Polish friends, we have made a study which was published in Radiation Research, and we noticed very big change in damage, in cytogenetic damage of cells with change in dose rate, for instance. This has many serious legal implications. Why? Because in this area, obviously, the imputability of an effect, if a worker wants to impute an employer or a member of the public want to impute the operator, is very clear. If there is a deterministic effect, you have a pathologist giving a diagnosis, imputation is clear and direct, legal imputation. You don't need too much to prove in court that a pathologist saying this damage is due to radiation. And here, well, here you cannot impute individually because you cannot distinguish an individual harm. It's collectively. Well, in some jurisdictions, collective imputation is not so easy. At least in my country, it's very rare. It's what in the Anglo-Saxon community they call it class action. But it's very rare, at least in my country, the collective imputation. I am not so sure in Russia. And in this area, Well, imputation is impossible because you have a theory, you have a supposition, but you don't have any proof. Therefore, imputation is impossible. But this has to be clear in the future, and it's not clear in this moment. There are legal cases all over the world, particularly in Fukushima, as you can imagine, and this is making a lot of harm. My epilogue, and I finish. The epistemological constraint of knowledge about the detrimental effect of exposure result in a dilemma for regulators. The paradigm that we establish in international safety standards make for the regulators, impossible to derive a clear distinction between safe and dangerous. This has created difficulties in explaining radiation exposure and has been a major cause of public fear to radiation and of psychological effects. We learned that in Chernobyl. We again learned this in Fukushima, and we are not doing anything to stop it. There appears to be a threat from radiation at any level, even though to very low levels. And this may be a consequence of the lack of recognition of our epistemological constraint. For that reason, it's so important to underline our epistemological constraint. It's only through radiation biology that we can get some mechanism inside possible to improve and resolve some of these epistemological constraints. This is the reason why today is so important radiobiology. Radioepidemiology, unfortunately, will not be of help to solve this problem because, as you see, there are constraints which are unavoidable in epidemiology. And I believe that will be crucial for science to identify false epidemiological outcomes. There has been many of them in very prestigious academies. The New York Academy, for instance, as you remember, make an epidemiological outcome saying that Chernobyl has killed 1 million people. I mean, this has to be avoided in the future. Additional research is likely necessary before new scientific finding can achieve and reproduce reliably the complexities necessary in developing an universally accepted radiobiological model for evaluating the ultimate health effect of low-dose radiation exposure. Of course, this conference is a necessary step in such direction, and I congratulate Glesakin for conveying this conference. Thank you very much. You have my data there. I believe that you have it in any case, but if you need any copy of this or whatever, I will be to your orders. Thank you very much.